Hello, beautiful people, and welcome, to first impressions video on Arlechino. Now, I want to get this out of the way. Arlechino has had quite a few major changes over the past few beta versions, which means that all of this is incredibly subject to change, which is part of why I'm going to be delaying the pre-release probably a little bit more than I usually do. That being said, we can still go and take a look at her current kit. Base stats, kind of alright, kind of whatever. Now, normal attack, invitation to a beheading. Performs up to 6 consecutive spear strikes. Consumes a certain amount of stamina to lunge forward for a charge attack, whatever. E, all is Ash. Increase Arlechino's attack based on her max HP at the time of entering the state. Attack bonus gained this week cannot exceed 400% of Arlechino's base attack. Now, the amount at talent level 9 is 5.96%, which means that if you're going for HP main stat on the Sens, you should generally end up a little bit north of 30k HP, which is going to be about 1800 attack. So it's a pretty huge attack steroid. Converts attack damage to pyro damage, which cannot be overridden by any other elemental infusion. And charge attacks apply the Blood Debt directive effect to the enemy's hit and increase Arlechino's resistance to interruption. All of this means she gets a really huge attack steroid, but her skill itself, if you look at the damage of the Blood Debt directive, 109%, that's a very small amount. On top of that, deals damage every 4 seconds. It's really not a lot. So her skill is mainly about the attack steroid that it gives. Her elemental burst, Bale Moon Rising. Commands a blazing spirit to attack, dealing pyro damage and a large AoE. Upon striking the enemy, regenerates a percentage of Arlechino's max HP. This effect can be triggered up to 5 times based on the number of enemies hit. If Arlechino's HP is below or equal to 50% when the enemy is hit, both the damage and HP generation are increased. So her elemental skill costs her HP, so you can reliably get, maybe not on the first rotation, but at least on the second rotation, and then if you're going on second chamber or third chamber, reliably on the first rotation as well, you can be low HP, and it's a 600 motion value hit. Thing is, this isn't actually that big. It's nice, but, you know, there are other nukes that deal more. So, she gets a really huge attack steroid on her skill, and her burst is not all that insane. What that means is that her normal attacks are going to matter a lot more than other characters do. Before we get into that, let's look at her passives. When a Mask of the Red Death state activated by all his Ash, basically when her E duration is over, all allies in the party, except Arlechino, will have their crit rate increased by 12%. This is kind of whatever. When Arlechino's HP is equal to or less than 50%, her pyro damage bonus is increased by 33%. That's pretty good. It's a lot of stats, but it's worth keeping in mind, right? A lot of characters that are going to be good with Arlechino heal, and 33% pyro damage, while good, is not necessarily enough to justify playing units with worse synergy than some of the really strong healers like Bennett or Xianyan. Finally, Sinners Alone shall nourish. Exploration passive, who cares? Now, like I said earlier, right, it's really going to be all about her normal attacks. And looking at the numbers on the normal attacks, they're honestly not that great. However, there's something that isn't shown here, which is that if you look at another polearm character, like Xiangling, for example, there's a lot of startup lag to the charge attack. Right? You go backward and then you go forward. Arlechino doesn't have this startup lag, which means you'll be able to do something like this. Right? Spam charge attacks, and the damage will go through. On top of that, you can do N2C instead of N1C. And the charge attack actually comes out just a few frames later than the second attack, which means you can pretty reliably get upwards of, if you're doing N1C, probably 9 or maybe even 10. And if you're doing N2C, something like 7 or 8. And when you look at it that way, when you realize that you can do those combos, obviously because she's a polearm user, you can't just go into a charge attack out of nowhere. It's always gonna, even if you just press 1, if you just hold your mouse button, you always do a normal attack before the plunge, which means she's going to have good synergy with characters like Yelan or Xingqiu, and you can use her with Yelan or Xingqiu or both, and reliably vape those charge attacks, which, much like Xiangling, do not have ICD. On top of that, her charge attack stamina cost is pretty manageable, right? Even if you are doing 9 charge attacks, you have enough stamina to do it. That being said, it does mean that you're not going to be able to dash cancel out of your charge attacks, but her Constellation 1 makes it so her charge attacks don't cost stamina anymore, so you can use it to do dash cancels and end up getting a larger amount of charge attacks. Overall, I'd say that her current strength is relatively high. She's not like, you know, game breaking, but I mean, she's a reaction carry, which means that she inherently has better scaling with dolphin investment. You have more different buffs accessible to you, like getting Elegy gives you EM, which matters more when you vape than when you don't. Getting Kazuha's C2 gives you a bunch of EM, stuff like that, right? She just has inherently more different ways that she can scale up through external buffs, which means that this is going to be a character that is really good if you like hyper invest into them. If you don't hyper invest into them, I see her being relatively good, but nothing crazy. She's going to be pretty single target, so that's something to keep in mind. If you're in AoE situations, it's not going to be that interesting, that great, but you can slightly increase the AoE damage you do by using a character like Xianyun, who lets you do plunge attacks. Because you already want to use jump cancels in her combos, using Xianyun is going to let you do N1C JP, right? Normal attack, charge attack, jump, plunge. Or into CJP, and yeah, it's gonna work out pretty well. As usual, right? Make sure you stick around, subscribe, all that good stuff. Leave a like, because I'll be doing a more detailed pre-release once the kit seems to have settled down a little bit. But yeah, so make sure you stick around for that, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, YouTube. And for those of you that have found this video a long time after it was released, this is an April's Fool video. This is just literally Hu Tao. I just inspected Element and changed all Hu Tao to Arlechino and changed the names of the abilities to Arlechino's abilities. I will actually do a real pre-release for Arlechino soon, but yeah.